The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to the IACET Monthly Application Assistance Webinar. My name is Becca Baxter and I am the IACET Accreditation Coordinator. I'm going to take a moment to review some of the features on GoToWebinar. On the right-hand side, you'll see a questions box. You can type your question and hit send to add it to the queue. We'll do our best to answer the question when appropriate, or we will answer questions toward the end of the presentation. When it's time for the question and answer period, you will be given the chance to ask questions. You will click on the hand symbol. I will then unmute your line so that you can ask your question directly. The Connection webinars bring in industry experts to discuss continuing education and training issues. These are free to members and $45 for non-members. On your screen, you can see some of our upcoming webinars, but please visit IACET's website for the complete list. We have an accreditation workshop coming up on May 21st in Chicago. This workshop can be attended in person or virtually and is $5.95 for members and $6.50 for non-members. If you're interested in attending this workshop, please contact me after this webinar, as we have a discount available for those who participate in today's webinar. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our commissioner, Lori Schneider. Ms. Schneider is a seasoned talent development professional with experience building programs that meet business objectives, growing leaders, improving performance, and increasing engagement, all built on best-in-class structure. She helped her organization create a corporate university, which first achieved IACET Accreditation in 2009. She has over 18 years of experience in corporate, higher education, nonprofit, and research. Terry LaLiberte is the Vice President of Accreditation and Special Projects for IACET. Her work experience includes work with adult learners as a trainer, teacher, and mentor. She has been a dedicated adult educator for over 20 years, working with practitioners in K-12, higher education, and adult education to ensure quality in all aspects of teaching and learning. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Becca Baxter, and I am the Accreditation Coordinator. Some of you may already be familiar with me, as I'm often the first contact when you begin the accreditation process. As part of IACET's mission to advance a global workforce, we bring you this webinar each month as an opportunity for you to gain an understanding of the application process, as well as to allow you the opportunity to ask a commissioner some of your questions. And as you are aware, the application process is a long process where we ask you to submit types of evidence to show conformity to the ANSI IACET standard for continuing education and training. And so the goals of this webinar are to be able to identify the steps of the application process. You should be able to list the document types that are required for both the initial and renewal application. Identify the location of additional resources available to you, and plan for the next steps in the application process. And first, I want to go over the fees that you'll see during the application process. The standard and application is bundled together, and those are available on the IACET website for $450. This bundle provides you with some of the guidance you'll need on completing the application. The application fee is due when you submit your application in the online portal. And I'll actually go over how to do that in just a few moments. And as you see here, the initial application fee is $3,900. Also, this is when new applicants will submit their annual membership fee as well. If you're submitting for reapplication, the fees are reduced, as is the application itself, and we'll talk about that as we continue into the webinar. The application fee includes the initial review and a subsequent review by your commissioners, as well as the site visit travel costs. So that fee covers the commissioner review. Usually there are 2 of those, and the site visit as well. If there is a 3rd review required, there is an additional fee for that. In order to purchase the standard and application, you'll need to go to the Standards tab at the top of the screen on our website and select the ANSI IACET Standard and AP application. Here you can add that to your cart and check out. And when you go to check out, it is at that point that you will be required to create an online account. Once you've created your account and purchased the application and standard, you can access that by logging into your account. And under your profile on the left-hand side of the page, you'll see a tab for Accreditation Application. When you click on that, there's a small drop-down menu, and that's where you can access your application. You can link multiple accounts to your application, so more than one person can work on it. And we do want individuals to be logging into their own accounts, not just sharing a single login. So here you'll just need to keep in mind that as people in your organization create accounts, only those that are marked as primary or secondary accounts can actually edit the application. Once you log in and access your application, you can see here that there are a few options on how you can look at the application. You'll see a button that says View Application, and that's just simply going to allow you to view a blank application online. Above that, you'll see a small, you'll see where it says Download Application, and that is actually going to allow you to download a PDF version of the application, and you'll be able to print that out if you need to take it with you to a meeting. I believe that would be helpful, when you're going to a meeting or working with others in your organization to maybe assign different parts. And then at the bottom there, you'll see Work on Application. And that's going to actually allow you to go in to edit the application itself. And again, that is actually only available to the people in your organization who are marked as primary or secondaries.
Becca, if I may, can we go back to the dashboard? I just wanted to also point out one other thing for our listeners today. If you notice in the upper right-hand corner of the dashboard, there's a field marked Awaiting Action By. And that's a very helpful field because a lot of times during the back and forth of the application process, sometimes providers are not sure, did I submit it? What am I waiting on? And it can be kind of frustrating for you when you don't know, who's got control of the application. That field will always tell you who has the ball in their court, so to speak. So when you submit your application, it will say Awaiting Action By IACET staff, and that would be Becca or me needing to do something with your application, either to check it in or to push it to your commissioners. Then it may move to Awaiting Action By Lori Schneider, who might be your lead commissioner for that. So you're going to be able to see, and then most importantly, when it gets pushed back to you, you'll see that it's awaiting action by you. And those due dates there are there just so that things don't get forgotten. But don't, if your running a little bit behind, or that due date's getting a little bit close and you've got some major projects that you're needing to get done, reach out to Becca, reach out to me. We can work with you on when those things need to be submitted. But I do encourage you, as you go through the accreditation process and you're uploading your documents and moving back and forth, this dashboard has a lot of useful tools on it that you'll be able to manage the process and feel a little bit more in control. The other nice feature of this dashboard is that it also allows you to message Becca, myself, your commissioners as well. So if you look below where it says the waiting action by, you'll see there's an archive of any of the notifications that automatically get sent to you as a part of this process. But then most importantly is there's that messaging capability, and that allows us to message you and you to be able to message back to us and to your reviewing commissioners. So I just wanted to point those out, Becca. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And now we're going to take a quick poll to find out which of you are seeking initial accreditation or reaccreditation. Let me get this.
While Becca throws that poll out to you, this is going to help Lori and I just kind of focus our comments. If we have a lot of folks who are seeking reaccreditation, we'll spend a little bit of time talking through the peculiarities of that application. It is a much simpler application, so those of you seeking initial accreditation, you have something to look forward to in 5 years as well. So it just helps us as we do the webinar to know how many are out there seeking initial versus reaccreditation. Okay, that's great. And we'll be able to hopefully address all of those questions that you have regarding initial. And we will, like I said, spend a little bit of time talking about reaccreditation because it's still a valid part of the whole process. We hope that all of you who achieve initial accreditation will come back in 5 years. And so this will be something for you to put away and be able to store your files in such a way that it'll make it easier.
Okay.
Want to go on, Beck?
There are 9 categories within the application. Each category has at least one element associated with it. And for each element, you'll see as you go through the application, there is guidance with each element that will help you to understand what it is that you need to submit.
And as Becca puts the PowerPoint back up on the screen, the online application and bundle will show you each of those guidance features. And if it's not open immediately when you're working through the application, there'll be a guidance line and there may be a little plus sign next to it. Please do make sure that you read carefully the guidance. There's a lot of folks out there who submit an application that may not have read it carefully. The guidance really will say, please submit, and then it will detail exactly what you need to submit for that element. Go ahead, Becca, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. When you've completed the application and submitted all of the required documents, your application will come to me for an initial staff review. And what I will be checking for is the completeness of your application. I'll be looking to see if all of the required pieces are there. Many times what we see is that an applicant may have uploaded the wrong document by mistake, or maybe they didn't provide enough detail in their process. So I'll be checking for that kind of thing, and so that when we do send your application on to your commission reviewers, what you'll be getting from them is feedback of substance from your first actual paid review. So the staff review does not count as one of your commissioner reviews, and it's kind of a freebie. So I'll take a look at it and make sure that nothing is missing. And I'll be looking at your processes to make sure that there's enough detail and information there for your reviewers to be able to say whether or not your process meets the standard. Once your application has passed the staff review, it will then be assigned to a lead reviewer and a site reviewer. And at that point, each commissioner will review your application independently. Then they consult as needed on any issues or questions that they may have. After the initial review, which can take an average of about 4 weeks, the commission will either approve your application for a site visit, or they'll send it back to you for clarification. And then we'll go into a second review. And actually, the getting it sent back and then going into a second review is really the most common thing that we see. So if your reviewers do send it back after the first time, that is really the most common thing. So it's not a reflection on your application.
And Lori, did you want to mention something about, we were talking before about how important that time between the first review and the second review, and that there is also the option for a phone call. If you wanted to mention, Lori, what you were talking about.
Hi. Yeah. When I'm reviewing an application, sometimes it just is easier to have a phone call. A lot of times I'll see things on an application that I can just clearly see that the applicant just doesn't really understand what we're asking for, and sometimes the phone call is just so much easier because we can go back and forth very quickly live on the phone and get a question answered, like, what is this, what you wanted, would this work, or how would this work, or maybe we can talk through a couple of examples, or talk through, like, well, this is what we use in this instance, would that work? And we can talk through it a lot easier live, and typically those phone calls actually are closer to a half an hour. Sometimes they stretch to an hour, but the questions just can get answered so quickly as opposed to going back and forth via email.
Thanks, Lori. And that messaging system that I pointed out earlier, that's how you would be asking for the phone call. And typically, we want you to have well-prepared questions for that phone call, so we will not schedule it unless we have the questions that you are concerned about. But once we have that, yes, as Lori said, the phone call can be a very quick way to understand exactly what you need to submit for that second review. Go ahead, Becca.
Okay. Here you'll see this flow chart gives you some idea of the time frame you can expect once your application has been submitted for review. Once you submit your application, it will be in staff's court for the initial staff review. And that should move in about 2 business days, give or take. And from there, it will either be returned to you, the applicant, or this may be cycled a few times between you and staff, or it will be sent to the commission for to start on their initial review. Once it does go to the commission, there's about a 15-day turnaround to either send the application back to you or schedule a site visit. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, keep in mind that receiving the application back after the first commission review is the most common. This doesn't mean that you have a bad application. It's just simply your reviewers asking for clarification or more information. When the reviewers get the application back for the second review, you'll notice the turnaround time is a little bit less. At that point, your application should be getting in really good shape from there. And then after the second review, the application will either be approved for the site visit or sent back to the applicant again for further clarification. At that point, if this were to happen, this is when you will see that additional fee of $400. And then once the site visit is complete, you will hear back from your site reviewer within 2 business days, and will receive notification from IACET regarding your approval or denial of your application. And Lori, I'm going to turn it over to you as we start to discuss site visits.
Okay, so in the application process, the process that Becca just described, before it goes to site visit, we're really looking to make sure that everything is there. And then the site visit, there might be a few things that we reserve for the site visit to discuss in a little bit more detail when we can have that live discussion. But pretty much everything is submitted. We see that, that your organization does adhere to the standard, or else we wouldn't even get it to the site visit level. When we do come out to the site visit, it's great for us to meet you in person and to, see your organization and see, the physical part of your organization, and be able to talk about a lot of different things live, and go over basically the application. So what we do is we confirm everything that was in the application, be able to see and touch it and feel it, and ask some questions of you, answer any questions that you might have. There are likely a few gaps. I don't think I've ever been to a site visit in which I didn't have a few questions. Perhaps you outlined, what your train the trainer process is, or how your instructors and curriculum creators, how they are trained in adult learning theory. But in this way, we can talk about it a little bit more and see and how is this actually played out. So there's different ways that we can, fill in any gaps that we might see on the application. And each application is so unique. Each organization is so unique. So there's not really even a trend in something that I've seen. Although I would say probably if there was one trend that I am seeing, it would be in how organizations are assessing themselves. And so I usually in my site visits, we always go over that. How are you assessing yourself? Not just the individual courses that you're teaching, but how are you assessing yourself as an organization? Because I think that's something that's really difficult to do. And so this way we can just discuss it, and you can show the site visitor, how you're doing that. But the other thing that we can do is collaborate. So it's great for us to meet not just the application, the person who's authoring the application or facilitating the application, but meet instructors, meet senior executives, and just anybody else in the organization, and be able to answer any questions about IACET, answer any questions about the standard, make some suggestions about, perhaps you are adhering to the standard, but maybe another step that you could take to improve your program might be, X, Y, Z. And so there's a lot of back and forth that goes on within this. Typically a site visit lasts around 3 hours. It just depends on, pretty much the only thing that might extend it is if there are a lot of questions that you might have, or I've done site visits in which the facility in which we were touring, I was taking a look at, was very large. And so we did a lot of walking. And so that one extended to about 4 hours because we did quite a bit of walking around to take a look at all the training facilities that they had there. But it's typically around 3 hours. We go through the application, just confirming it, answering any questions, gives me the opportunity to ask a few questions and just getting a little bit more description on whatever it is on your application that I need clarification on. And then just to be able to discuss IACET and this whole process and how you might, work annually to maintain your accreditation and set yourself up for success for the next application period 5 years from now.
Thanks, Lori. And I'm going to let Becca throw out the next poll question for us. We're going to move into talking about the standard. And the reason we ask this question is that the IACET standard for continuing education and training is really modeled around sound instructional design. And so it helps us to know how do you go about putting together the learning events that you offer, what kind of instructional design model you use. And if you don't know who Addie and Sam are or what they are, no worries. You're going to, by default, almost go into an instructional design model as you go through the standard. And you'll see that as we go through the standard, and I'll just do that in a minute, you'll see that it does follow one of these instructional design models pretty closely. So if you could, Becca, show us the results of the poll. Most folks do tend to use an ADDIE model, or you may be using an ADDIE model, but you don't know it as such. Thank you, Becca. If you would throw up the slide with the standard on it. The way that our standard is designed is we look at it as having this kind of ground floor or foundation of the administrative tasks and responsibilities and policies and procedures that must be in place in order for there to be quality education and training being offered. So one of those would be making sure that your organization has all of the policies in place that a business operating in the area in which you operate. Now, we do have a lot of foreign providers who have different realities and different legal structures, and so what we're asking for is to make sure that your policies match what the laws are regarding discrimination, intellectual property rights, things like that. So what we're looking for in that category, category 1, organization and control, are those types of documents so that we know that your learners know if there's a problem, they know who to go to. And that's really part of the key in category 1. In category 2, we all know that a supported learner, a learner whose environment is conducive to learning, is going to be much more successful. So in category 2, we are looking for you to show us how you designate what the environment is and what the support is that you give both to your learners as well as to the folks who are involved in the design, development, and delivery of the learning that you offer, the learning events that you offer. Category 3, we all know having the right people in place really makes a difference, but not only that, as learning professionals and talent development professionals, we also know that you have to support your people. And so what kind of review processes do you have for staff and instructors and all of that, as well as how do you promote their professional development as well. And then in category 8, we're looking to make sure that your learners know that they'll be able to reach out to you when they need records and transcripts of the courses that they've taken, and that it's very clear to them to know what steps they are expected to do in order to receive the CEUs and get the achievement from you. So that's kind of, like I said, that's the foundation of what a good administrative processes should have within a learning organization. Now, the kind of circular graph on the top of that, that really deals with the instructional design categories. And so when you look at that, and again, you could map this to the ADDIE model, is that in category 4, we want to see that there is a needs analysis, that there's some way that you are either doing an environmental scan or surveys or whatever it is that has determined that the training course is the right intervention. Without a quality needs analysis, it's not really possible to write solid learning outcomes. And so the learning outcomes, and part of the standard will be asking you to map your learning outcomes to the needs analysis. So they're really, the standard is looking for how did those learning outcomes come to be and what needs are they going to be addressing. So this will be something that you'd have to show evidence of within your application. And then from the learning outcomes is category 6, which is the content and the instruction. So what are your processes for making sure, for example, that your material is up to date and that the instruction is being delivered according to the design. So those types of things we're looking for in category 6. Category 7 really looks at, are you assessing your learners? Are your learners being informed as how well they are meeting the learning outcomes? Are they being given feedback throughout the course to allow them to grow and achieve the learning outcomes that you've stated at the beginning? And then in category 9, we're looking to make sure not only that you're evaluating your learners, most people do, but that you're also using those evaluations that your learners give you, the feedback that your learners give you, to improve your courses, your organization, and what do you do with those evaluations. So those are kind of the main pieces here of the instructional design categories and how they would feed into each other and perform a virtuous cycle for your learning events. So anyway, so that's where the standard focuses on. And then how do we go about, if you would back up the next slide, how do we go about requiring that? And I'm going to let Lori talk about the types of documents that the application requires you to upload. There are three main categories. Lori?
Hi. Yeah, the three main categories are policy, process, and evidence. So first of all, with policy, just think about policy is really describing, you know, what you do, when you do it, where you do it, why you do it, and maybe even who does it. So really what this is defining the expectations that are guiding, influencing, determining decisions or actions, the scope, the roles, the responsibilities within the organization. What we're looking for is, what are you saying that you're doing? What is the line in the sand that you're drawing on this one particular topic? I am also looking to see, you know, when is it effective? So what is the date? So I see that as kind of a, you know, when is this put into effect? And here's a sample. So what is the date that it is in effect, and who is the authorized person that's putting this into practice? So why we're looking for that is because we're looking to see, you know, we want to make sure that this is something that's been adopted within the organization or within the department of the organization, so that we can see, is this something that's really in effect? So is there a date, and is there somebody who, you know, has authorized it to be in effect, so that, you know, this really is a policy that is being adhered to. And we're looking to see, does it address the particular topic that it's supposed to be addressed, or that it's submitted for. If we go to the next one, here's the standard elements in which does require a policy, so that you can see that there are several. And moving on to the next one is a process or procedure. So what we're looking for, the process or procedure, is specifically who, when, or what order is it in, and how is it being done. So think about when you're looking at your processes, if an equally qualified person can step in and be able to do this process in the exact same way, then you have written a successful process. So all the different activities, the process can be listed in a process document or a procedured standard operating procedure document. It can be a checklist. It could be a flow diagram. So anything that just shows who's doing what and what order, or when is it being done, if it's tied to like a calendar. And the processes are listed in many of the different components of the standard. So we ask to see these processes many times. And if we go to the last one, evidence. So evidence is showing us that this process or this procedure or policy is actually being carried out. It's actually being used. And what specific way is it being used? So we're looking for, if there's a checklist, all right, let's see a completed checklist. If there's a design document, let's see a design document for one specific class or program that's being used. And so we're looking to see that, does it match the evidence? Does the evidence match what you say it supports, the policy or the procedure that it supports? And so, I mean, these can be in the form of many different things. Like I said, a completed checklist. If it is a completed checklist, who completed it? When did they complete it? And for which course did they complete it for? It can be emails to learners. So sometimes we ask for communications. What is the procedure of communications that you send out to identify whether or not somebody has completed a course successfully? So just even copying the email that is sent to the learner would work for this. Pages from your handbook or your manual, as long as you identify where did this come from. Screenshots of a website, and you know, so just identify where this came from. Any other documents that can describe it. We've had people insert pages from PowerPoints to show how they describe at the beginning of a learning event how, you know, what the learning objectives are. I've had people submit things when we talk about how do you evaluate a course or how do you assess your program. Those are two different components of the standard. People have submitted notes from meetings in which that was discussed and what are the results or the notes from that meeting. So what I encourage applicants to do is really think about, what are we doing? I don't necessarily want you to create something new if you're, but what are you already doing, and how can you document that so that somebody else could step into your role and run this program? So that's what we're really looking to see here with the evidence. So evidence is required in many of the components of the standard. And pretty much if we ask for a policy or a procedure, we're going to ask for evidence that it's being implemented as well.
So here's a little quiz just to see if people were paying attention. So if you would throw that poll up there, Becca, for us. So again, as Lori said, there's a lot of places within the application where we ask for policies and the process procedures that carry out those policies, but there's something that's also very, very important. So hopefully you all picked up on that, and I'll let Becca show us the response, and we'll see if you guys were actually listening as Lori was talking about what's required. Yes, absolutely. So for many of the elements, you must have the policy or the process, and then the evidence that it is being carried out. And one of the key things that, thank you, Becca, one of the key things that we see a lot of times in the applications is people will submit blank forms or mock-ups of emails. The evidence has to be actual evidence from an offering of your learning event. So make sure that it's something that's been used, something that's been sent to a learner, something that an instructor has actually taught from. Those types of things we do want to make sure that we see. So the evidence comes from the exemplary courses that you choose for your application. Again, sometimes people are a little confused about what we accredit as IACET. What we accredit is your design, development, and delivery of the learning events that you offer to your clients, your students, your learners. So what that means is that we're not going in and looking at every single one of your classes. And I get that question. I know you probably get it a lot too, Becca, as I have this course that I want to have approved. Well, we don't approve courses, we approve you as a provider, but the way that we approve you as a provider of courses is you do have to share with us some of your exemplary courses. So in the course of the application, we ask and we classify the learning that you offer to your learners in three very big buckets. So exemplary courses, you're going to be able to choose, is your course a live course? Meaning, is it an instructor-led, whatever language, there's lots of different ways that we call those, but that's basically described as the student, the learner, and the instructor are in the same time and space. So that's really what we put in as live. So that's a very traditional type of a workshop seminar course that you would offer. Then we, the very big bucket of distance learning is anything that where the instructor and the student are separated by time and or space. So distance learning could be synchronous, asynchronous. It could even be old-fashioned correspondence courses through the mail. Whatever it is that separates your learners from your instructors, that would be classified as a distance learning. So if you offer both asynchronous and synchronous e-learning courses, you really only need to pick one as your exemplary course. So just bear that in mind. And then there's the hybrid of the two, which I think a lot of providers are doing these days, where you'll front load some information for your learners in an asynchronous type of an event, and then those learners then come to a live classroom with the instructor. So those are the types of courses where we're looking at the hybrid or the blend of the two methodologies. So the important thing, if you would go to the next one, Becca, so the important thing to remember is that in your exemplary courses, if you offer live courses, pick your best course. Pick the one that you've been offering for a while, that you've got some good documentation around, that you've got learners who've been through it before, and you can pull emails that are congratulatory to those learners regarding their achievement of the CEUs. You've got evaluations from learners where they've come back and told you this class was great, or this class really should be 2 days instead of 1, whatever the feedback is. So we really do want to make sure that you're picking good courses. So if you offer live courses and distance courses, and you don't have that hybrid or blend, you're going to need to pick one of each. If you teach all 3 methods, you're going to need one from each of those methods, and you'll be uploading your evidence, your processes, and your policies for each methodology that you offer. And that's a really important piece, and you must be consistent. So if you have a live fencing class that you offer, and in category 4 you show us the needs analysis for that fencing class, and then in category 7 you're showing us the assessment for a boxing class, that is not going to work for your reviewers. They're going to want to see that fencing class carried all the way through the application. So I hope that that's clear to folks, that we really are looking for an exemplary course that showcases how you deliver each of the different methodologies that you offer to your learners. And before we go on, I just wanted to open it up and ask Becca if there's any questions that have come through on the chat, or if anybody has a question at this point, we could pause here before we go further.
I don't have any questions yet.
Okay.
To speak up.
All right. Well, we will have a little bit of time, hopefully, at the end. We've spent a lot of time talking about the initial accreditation application. So now let's move to talk a little bit about the reaccreditation application. And Lori, I know you've looked at a lot of these too, so I'm going to ask you to chime in as well. But some of the things to keep in mind with the reaccreditation application is that it really is a simplification of the initial application, so that when you are going through this process the first time around, you're going to be documenting the policies and the processes, but do so in such a way that 5 years from now, it will be simple enough for you just to be able to pull some of your records off the shelf. So knowing what's being asked for in the reaccreditation application is very helpful as you organize your materials, records, and data, so that 5 years from now, this isn't such a monumental task. We ask that you provide us narratives around any of the changes that have happened in the 5 years interim between your initial and your reaccreditation. And then for some of those narratives, we do ask for a certain amount of evidence, so staffing changes, things like that. We're asking you as well to tell us how you improve your courses, both from your initial accreditation comments that Lori talked about at the beginning. Also, what do you do to kind of have a continuous improvement methodology? Now, the real meat of the reaccreditation application is the exemplary courses. We ask you to upload the documentation for 3 exemplary courses during the reaccreditation process. And it is everything that the initial application breaks down into bite-sized pieces. What you're doing in the reaccreditation application is you're uploading the entire 7-course meal. So you're uploading in one PDF everything around the learning event, from the needs analysis, marketing collateral, instructor resumes. You do not have to include the entire PowerPoint slide deck for the course. I see that all the time, but really we're looking for excerpts from that meet the standard. So again, that's an important thing to keep in mind as you put together your data and filing structures from an initial accreditation, is know that at some point 5 years from now, you're going to need to pick a course and have all of this documentation around that course. And so that's really, I think that's the place where the commissioners will push back a lot too, is in the documentation for those exemplary courses, because they are looking for standard compliance within the documents that you submit there. Lori, do you want to add anything about the exemplary courses on a reapplication?
No, just to reinforce, that's really, really the meat of it. That's really what we're looking at. You don't have to put everything in, it's just the evidence. This is what we're looking for. We're just looking at, are you adhering to the policies and procedures you established? So this is all the evidence.
Yeah, exactly. And then there will be a site visit for the reaccreditation application as well. As Lori said, there's a lot of benefits to the site visit, and we want to make sure that we're able to provide to you those the benefits to your organization. So that's really what the reapplication is in a nutshell. It does take a little bit less time for our commissioners and for the staff to be able to move the application through, but it is something that if you're coming up on your reaccreditation date, we do ask that you try to get that application in 90 days before your accreditation expires, because that gives us enough time to get you through the process. All right, so the next thing we want to talk about, and we're going to all three chime in on this because this is an important stuff here, is application tips. There's a lot of advice and a lot of things that the three of us have seen over the years from the applications that have been submitted. First and foremost, all of the documents that you will be uploading will be in the form of PDFs. I cannot stress enough how valuable it is for those organizations that utilize the full capabilities of a PDF editor. We can tell scans, and we know when you're saving things from a Word document into a PDF document, and sometimes it just doesn't come up as clear, or you're not able to annotate and be able to put the comments in on the documents that will help your reviewers understand why you've uploaded this document. I often say in the workshops, it's kind of like when your site visitor comes, you're not going to just open the front door and say, well, here's our training organization, go have a look. You're going to take them around, you're going to introduce them, you're going to show them your classrooms maybe, or you're going to introduce them to the LMS manager and to the instructional designers and to all of these people. You need to make sure you're doing the same thing in your documentation. Help your reviewers understand what part of this document you are saying meets the standard. There is great value in highlighting text. I've seen people put arrows saying this is section 5.1, this is section 6.3. That is so helpful to your reviewers, so they will know exactly what you expect them to see on this page. And that being said, too, be kind to your reviewers. If you upload a 40-page employee handbook and what you want your reviewers to see is on page 27, just upload 27. If you really feel like you want to give them some context for page 27, upload the table of contents to the book, and then just say, you know, the rest of this is available when you come for the site visit, but this page is what we have used to meet the standard. And that will make life a lot easier for your reviewers, because I know Lori will confirm this, is that if it's uploaded, she feels an obligation to look at it, and it can take everything a lot longer when you upload entire documents when a section or a page might be useful. Lori, anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, and then the other danger, aside from just the amount of time it takes to review really large documents, is I might see things that you know, I don't have context for, and so it might make me think, oh, well, this doesn't meet the standard, or that doesn't meet the standard, but maybe it's referring to a different course or to a different program or something that you're not using as an exemplary, and so so that just might cause confusion. There might be back and forth that goes with that. For example, one time I was looking, one organization uploaded their entire strategic plan, which was like a 60-something page document, and in it they included a few other programs that they were not going for accreditation, but there was no context to that. And some of the information, the details provided in that strategic plan, you know, clearly identified that they would not meet the standard. These programs would not meet the standard. And so it just took a while to go back and forth saying, well, I have concerns about this because it doesn't meet the standard. Oh, well, that doesn't, you know, well, I didn't intend for that to be under, you know, accreditation, that we're not going to issue CEUs for that. Okay, well, you know, just clarify exactly what you intend. Which page is it on? Highlight it, or just, you know, only upload those specific documents. And because sometimes also there could be confusion as to things may not be matching if you're uploading many different things. So this just helps you keep things organized so that, you know, that everything that the information that you do upload, it all matches if there's a lot less of it. So that's helpful.
Perfect. And Becca, do you have any tips for our listeners today?
You both covered almost everything that I had jotted down. The only other thing that I want to point out that I see very, very often is when you're submitting your processes or when you're writing your processes and your policies, we're not looking for a narrative. I see that a lot, that it's just a very short paragraph that's just written quickly, in a Word document. So you're just make sure that you pay attention to your processes and your policies and write them. I think it's helpful to use a form, not necessarily one of the ones that we've provided, but those were just good examples that we have.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, and that does make, I will make one more additional point on that, is that your reviewers are also going to want to see that your policies and processes and procedures live within the organization and not just in the application. And sometimes when we see that narrative that's just been uploaded as a PDF and it doesn't have kind of the look and feel of something that was pulled from a process manual or a policy page from your website, it can cause a little bit more back and forth, as Lori said. So just pay attention to how you're presenting yourself and your organization in the application. And so if we don't have any questions, we can open it up for questions right now. If not, then Becca, if you want to let people know what additional resources they have.
We do have at least one question. Denise has sent me a message, but Denise, I'm going to unmute you if you want to ask your question really quick.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly.
Wonderful. So I'm coming from this from probably a different perspective than some of your other constituents, but we are an international business honor society, and we have about 830,000 members that have been inducted since our founding. So the largest portion of our membership base is alumni. So we induct about 20,000 new members every year. One of the programs that I have developed is called our Masterclass series, and I've got a curriculum for that program in place. So what we would like to do is for the curriculum itself, register for continuing education units. And we're a little bit different in the sense that the events will be facilitated at different locations around the country, and there won't necessarily be one specific facilitator for each of the different components of the curriculum. So we're just wondering, is this accreditation, would it work for us? Are we on the right path? Should we look to a different organization, maybe because we're kind of outside the box scope of things?
Well, I'll take a stab at it, and then Lori, if I don't get it all, you can answer as well too.
Okay. Thank
you.
But
I wanted to say, Denise, you're on the right. You're talking to the right organization. It's not the way that you deliver the course. As long as the policies and processes that you have in place, that your learners know that it's your training that you're offering, that it's your organization that is offering it, your instructors can change every 10 minutes in the course. Whatever the demands of the course design are is no big deal. We accredit all sorts of organizations that offer their training throughout the globe and are able to issue CEUs for it because they've put into place those policies and processes that are compliant with the standard. So when you go through the standard, you'll see that there's a lot of flexibility and freedom in how you design and deliver the training to your members or alumni that I think will meet your needs. And it will also help you to have a good structure around it too, especially if you've got multiple types of instructors and locations. So you know when you design the course what you want the classroom to look like because you have an experience in mind that you want your learners to have. And so part of our standard requires that you specify very clearly what that learning environment looks like. So this gives you that consistency and continuity every time your training course is being offered. So that's my little nutshell. Lori, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, usually what I tell people if they're wondering, would we qualify? Does this qualify? I ask them, are you in control of this course? If you're in control of this course, so you're in control of the quality, you're in control of at least establishing who the instructors could be or what qualifications that they should have. You're in control of the attendee records, so you're keeping those records. Then this would really be a program for you. Most of our providers do something very similar to this.
Okay, that's good to know. It's very helpful.
All right, Becca, we got about 5 more minutes. Do you want to close us out? And to also let folks know, if we did not get to your question, we will be happy to follow up from emails at the end after this webinar is over.
Okay. Okay, we'll take a quick look at additional resources that are available to applicants. Once you purchase the standard and application bundle, you will see that additional online resources will become available to you through either the resource tab or through your portal when you log in. These resources are very helpful as you work through and build your application and for your organization. They'll give you the language that you want to include in your policies and processes, as well as give you examples of a design document and some information on Bloom's taxonomy and Kirkpatrick's learning and training evaluation theory. So definitely look through these online resources when they become available to you. I get a lot of questions, especially regarding design documents and that kind of thing. So you have an example design document right there. So it's really valuable. One of the key pieces we give you along with this webinar is the accreditation guide. This lays out the time frame you can expect, as well as give you a copy of the agreement we ask you to sign. You'll have access to the self-assessment checklist as well, which you'll find useful in the application, as well as in your annual reports once you become an accredited provider. And this webinar is designed to give you a general overview of the application process, and we always recommend that you attend an accreditation workshop. Those are usually facilitated by Terry and a commissioner, and are offered across the country throughout the year. So, and many of them can be attended either live or virtually. You can see here in the one in Chicago and the one coming up in Denver are both available for live attendance or virtual attendance. You'll notice that the May workshop is a 1-day workshop, and that will go over the standard in depth. And then the July workshop is a 2-day workshop. So that will also go over the standard, but you'll take a look at learning outcomes and course design more in depth. So if you're coming in to your application from more of a subject matter expert without having a strong background in adult learning, the 2-day class you'll find really valuable.
And I just want to put a plug for that 2-day class as well. I enjoy teaching the 2-day class. Not that I don't enjoy the 1-day as well, but the 2-day class, we really do get to dig in and actually write processes. Typically, the commissioner who joins me will then also give each group that works on their process some really substantive feedback regarding how they've written their process. So it can be a very, very useful experience. And especially, as Becca said, when you're coming from subject matter expertise background as opposed to instructional design, sometimes there's things that you just don't know that you don't know until you start digging into the application.
Okay, so here are your next steps. You want to take a look at the resources that we have available to you. Most of your commissioners can tell, well, all of your commissioners can tell if you have utilized your resources. And consider registering for a workshop to get additional training. I think of some of our applicants feel like they don't have time, but the amount of time that you save in the long run by attending a workshop can be can be huge for you. Also contact us if you have any additional questions. Our contact information is there. And then complete your application and be one step closer to being a member with IACET. And just to reiterate, if we weren't able to get to your questions, or if you have any further questions, you can email me at info@iacet.org. The next accreditation assistance webinar will be on June 12th at the same time, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And this concludes our webinar. I want to thank you, Lori, for being with us today. And as I said, if you have any questions for any of the three of us, feel free to forward those to us at info@iacet.org. And we will be sure to respond to your questions as soon as possible. Thank you all for being with us, and have a nice afternoon.